Hey there! We're so excited to be here today to film another Exponent mock interview. I'm here today with Devaki, a technical program manager at Cisco, to do a behavioral type mock interview. So, Devaki, mind introducing yourself to those watching?
Hello, this is Devaki Srinivasan. I orchestrate and strategize teams delivering software products to our customers. Most recently, I worked as a senior technical program manager for Cisco Systems, and I'm here to share this mock interview session.
All right, let's get into it. So, I'd love to ask you today, tell me about a time you led a cross functional team.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you my experience while leading a cross functional team. Kevin, just to set a little bit of stage, I'm going to talk about a digital transformation initiative that I led during one of my um, projects. So, just to give you a little bit of context, the aim was to, there were several go to market systems and business was looking to actually consolidate them because these go to market systems were legacy systems, they were monoliths, and moving them or modernization was the path to go forward for the digital transformation initiative. I'll tell you why business was interested in this particular initiative and what it meant to the leadership was looking at improving operational efficiency across various departments in terms of launching products quickly in front of our customers, meeting some of the compliance and security requirements while selling products and services around the world, and exceeding customer satisfaction, right? Um, to give you the scale of the complexity and the altitude in which I was working on is fourfold, I would say. The scale I was, the program was complex due to the scale because it impacted sales, marketing, finance, um, and BDM, Business Development Group. There were other challenges, such as technical challenges, ensuring data integrity and security while integrating new systems with existing ones. Last but not the least, the change management, overcoming resistance to change and driving smooth adoption across all these cross functional teams. Um, Budget was always a constraint. So, as a senior technical program manager, I implemented a few strategies to work with these cross functional teams and undertake the digital transformation initiative. Um, I did a bunch of things. I want to highlight the top level actions for the purposes of interview. The first thing I did was I set up a cross functional steering committee to oversee the program. The steering committee involved stakeholders from engineering, product, sales, marketing, finance, compliance, security. The second thing I did was I divided the program into smaller, manageable phases with clear milestones. Just to give you a little bit of example, originally we had four GTMs, four storefronts. So I divided them into uh, one each and gradually went down to the sector category of B2B and B2C. And I established a PMO, a program management office, to coordinate the various work streams while working with the whole set of cross-functional team members. The second area that I would like to share with you is regarding the stakeholder management, right? Um, to keep all the stakeholders up to date in terms of the progress of the program, I conducted regular briefings to maintain transparency. I implemented a robust communication plan to keep all levels of the organization informed. The other thing I did was to establish feedback loops, right? Whenever a specific stakeholder had a concern, I established a way for them to actually express their concerns and how and found ways to address their concerns. The feedback loops were primarily either synchronous or asynchronous, like me meeting with them or are they expressing their concerns on a WebEx channel or a Teams channel? I want to also talk about the risk management. So, to manage the risk across such a cross functional, massive, complex program, I maintained a comprehensive risk register with mitigation strategies for each of these risks that I identified across scope, schedule, um, cost, quality, compliance, and security. Um, and I conducted regular risk assessments with these cross functional stakeholders to ensure that the project remains um, fully manageable and risks are mitigated as opposed to discovering something at the end and really causing any delays to the program delivery. I also implemented change control process to manage scope creep. With such a huge number of stakeholders, it is very easy to fall into the trap of scope creep. So I established a change control process where there was a steering committee that would meet um, every month to ensure that the work streams and the deliverables for the work streams are progressing as expected, as opposed to eh, handling any new scope requests or creeps that happen. I also track the performance across the project updates, like by creating Confluence pages. So Confluence pages sit on top of Jira dashboard. I built the Jira dashboards, which will indicate um, the metrics around development teams, such as burn down charts and sprint velocity and how the teams are being utilized. The Confluence page that I built on top of it would actually display an up-to-date status in terms of how the teams are occupied and what initiatives they are, what work streams they are currently operating on. So the other key KPIs that I established for that program and I tracked for this program included system adoption rates, um, operational efficiency improvements like customer satisfaction scores when we actually migrated to the new cloud platform, and employee productivity improvements, such as velocity and capacity within the team, lead time, cycle time, all of these metrics that I used to manage. So I want to also jump into the results, right? Like over the 2 years, by maintaining a very flexible approach and through continuous stakeholder engagement, new systems was rolled out across um, to our customers, right? There are several lessons learned from this experience. One is the importance of strategic planning, I would say, when working with a large number of stakeholders and cross functional teams, um, effectively managing communication through synchronous and asynchronous ways to build that trust, transparency with these stakeholders, and using program management techniques like Agile and Scrum in driving large scale organization changes, which allow for rolling wave decomposition as um, new information becomes apparent and it entertains quick pivots. So that's how I was able to manage a huge cross functional digital transformation initiative.
Exponent helps candidates ace their tech interviews with our online courses, peer mock interviews, and expert interview coaching. We publish new mocks every week, so be sure to like and subscribe. All right, Devaki, thanks so much for telling me more about the digital transformation initiative and all the different teams you worked with and systems you set up as part of that. You mentioned earlier you worked with a bunch of different stakeholders from engineering to sales to security, etc. Which stakeholder would you say was the most challenging you worked with, and how did you handle pushback from that team?
So apparently, I would want to call out one specific group that I felt was had different competing priorities. Right? It isn't a difficult stakeholder; it is a different priority that the team was working on. The scale, like I said, even within engineering itself, I was working with 10 software engineering teams, and each of these teams were working on their own backlog items. So during when it was time for the digital transformation initiative and the sprints that had to occur, I was acting as the scrum of scrum leads, right? So I would be plugged into each one of the um, scrum leads to get an update in terms of what they're working on and what challenges do they have for today, and I'd find ways to remove the challenges and the blockers, right? It turned out that originally when I laid out the plan and the schedule, every team was in agreement with what we wanted to do, but then this particular engineering team that was building um, the foundational capability of calling the API and setting up the foundational authorization mechanism didn't have anything to respond, right? Like they didn't have anything to demo at the end of the sprint. When I Nobody was aware of the fact what they were working on. It turned out that they were working on a business critical initiative which was resulting in a immediate revenue loss to the company, right? So they didn't have anything to deliver, as a result of which it created a scheduled risk in the program, because all the other 9 engineering teams are looking for this particular team to provide their underpinning, the underlying capability upon which the other teams will work on, right? So this was a scheduled risk. And how I handled this risk was by proposing options. Like one of the option was to actually consult with a cloud professional services team immediately and get it resolved, or look at scope reduction. And the third is to extend the schedule. Again, it is not preferred, but then when there are no chances, we have to undertake that. So, out of the 3 options that I proposed, business and engineering was okay. Engineering product were okay with all the options, but business was not okay with the schedule, right? So, by explaining it to them in terms of I had advocated that we follow a scope reduction and still release on time, because that will at least allow us an opportunity to launch in front of customer, test the waters, and really get the initial reading in terms of any security or compliance vulnerabilities that we can get, right? Uh, but business was a little strict on the scope, and when I explained the impact um, of delaying it, and by showing that there is a reduction in scope would actually benefit the launch, they were willing to listen. And what it led was, I in fact proposed a soft launch, like releasing just to a beta set of customers initially for the reduced scope, and get their feeling or get their satisfaction numbers before we actually can roll out to the rest of the global audience. The one particular thing that helped me influence the business stakeholder is actually by demonstrating value, right? When I originally launched um, the beta launch to a set of customers, we were able to get initial readings saying that there were some performance issues um, after the digital transformation, and it was also resulting in poor customer satisfaction numbers, right? So by demonstrating value and adjusting the um, prioritizing the backlog for the development of the engineering team to pick up performance improvements and and right sizing our cloud environment, I was able to uh, pivot quickly and show value to the business. At that time, they looked at the value, and they were now willing to accept that, yes, this is how we should go forward. I would say overall, engineering had been a difficult stakeholder given the competing priorities that they were working with, but I was able to balance the priorities by working through a scope reduction, and asking for using some negotiation skills, right? Like allowing 30% of the team to still focus on the original goal. That way, we are not lagging from a delivery perspective. And the other stakeholder that I had to convince, or I found difficult, was the business, because we were compromising on the scope, which actually led to phased delivery, right? But then when there is ambiguity, the best way to handle it is through um, flexible plans and experimentation and using pivots based on short-term goals and clear decision points. So that's how I handled the various stakeholders who I had differences with.
So it sounds like it was engineering and business that gave you the most trouble in terms of different priorities, but you were able to leverage negotiation skills, empathy skills, et cetera, to make sure that you were able to communicate with them effectively. So thank you for telling me about those examples. So leveling back up to the digital transformation initiative that you were leading, how do you think about measuring success of a program? And let's use one of the programs you implemented here as an example.
So I would divide the success based on several criteria. One is the adoption from a customer standpoint. And the second category that I would use is system level metrics or success criteria. And the third is operations, right? So I'll talk to you about what these three specific areas are and what KPIs or success criteria were used. First is system adoption criteria included how many customers we're getting on the newer digital transformed application and what digital transformation platform, what is the customer satisfaction numbers, and what is the average time a customer is spending, like daily active users, monthly active users, um, feature adoption rate, the various features that were on the digitally transformed system. Overall talks overall the social media engagement as well, right? Like in terms of how many people are sharing uh, on the new platform, the content on the new platform on a specific social media, like either LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or wherever they want to. um, I think that's the system, the high level business level metrics. When it comes to system level metrics, um, system level metrics include um, code quality. How many defects are there on the digitally transformed platform? Have we executed all test cases? What is the pass fail rate? And what is the lead time, cycle time, and velocity? Um, and from an engineering or a system standpoint, how frequently are we deploying on production, right? On the digitally transformed system, and how has the build time reduced from a monolith to a microservice architecture, digitally transformed architecture. The last category is the operational level metrics like latency, which would which is like response times when measured across the globe from US, China, Europe, and India, and it helps to detect any performance bottlenecks the system might be experiencing. A second metric is like traffic, how many requests per second or queries per second are we getting. It helped us in capacity planning and identifying any unusual patterns. Um, the third metric, the typical golden signals of site reliability engineering, the errors, right? Number of failed requests, which indicated system reliability and any user experience issues. The saturation level, as such, like memory consumption, CPU usage, IO operations, all of this indicate how full the services are and how close are they to the capacity limits. So the threefold set of KPIs were used to measure the success of the program.
All right, Devaki, thanks for telling me about the categories of metrics that you pay attention to from adoption to system level to operations for measuring the success of programs you're in charge of. That said, prioritization is one of the biggest things that we need to consider as program managers, product managers, et cetera. So within that, let's say adoption category, right? The metrics that you mentioned, CSAT, DAMAO, et cetera. How do you think about prioritizing certain metrics and having North Star metric or metrics? Just tell me more about that prioritization framework there.
In terms of the metrics from a product standpoint, I'm focused on actually ensuring that my product gets the most adoption rate, the features or the features within the product. Apparently, feature adoption translates to usage, and it translates to revenue in case of the in my case. So the first set of metrics or my north star is to drive towards feature adoption, which is like click through rates or bounce rate or click through rates that are converting into an order. The click through rate could be a feature that they clicked on, a could be a search feature that a user is heavily using on the digitally transformed website, and that kind of takes the user to the product detail page, and then from then on they added the product to the cart. So that is called as a complete flow path and customer journey, and I'm tracking the metrics of feature adoption associated with each one of these clicks through a click through rate. And conversion, order conversions, like add to cart and then order conversions. In, so that is going to be my North Star metric to strive towards all click through. Absolutely, all click through rates and add to carts are converted into an order. But in the real time world, this is not the case. At least 30 or 40% of the products that gets added to the cart never gets a purchase accomplished, right? But so I'll use the add to cart as one of the key metric, and the click through rate to prioritize my product adoption and the business side of measuring the success of the marketplace that I just spoke about. The other, you also want me to highlight the other set of metrics which I will be focused on. The other side, is that okay, Kevin?
Yes, go ahead.
So the other set of metrics that I would be interested in is definitely customer satisfaction, right? How do customers feel about a specific feature gathered through either Qualtrics survey or Verint surveys, qualitative and quantitative, and through some sentiment analysis to measure how the customers feel using a specific feature on the marketplace. So, customer satisfaction, add to cart would be key metrics that I would drive the team towards. Otherwise, the second level of metrics would be on the system level, uptime. Like uptime should be industry standard, like 99.999, and then there shouldn't be any major outages on production that will prevent the customers from continuing the transaction, which will ultimately result in a revenue loss to the company.
So let's move on to the feedback portion of the mock. So first of all, I would love to give the floor to you. What do you think you did well versus not well?
I think I was okay about laying down the complex structure of the cross functional teams, the various areas of program management like risk management, stakeholder management, and I explained the scale, the KPIs as well. That question, I think I hit it pretty well. The second question was around the metrics as well, right? I think I was thorough when it came to metrics. The third question where you asked me about which particular metrics I would target to, I think that was the part where I felt because I had fewer metrics that I would target, I don't want the team to actually get entertain a lot of distractions, right? Like, so keeping them focused on one particular one or two handful of just a two important metrics would make sense, but I would have done better. The third question is what I felt.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for the self reflection. And I do think overall the performance was strong, but let's focus on some things that would be able to take you to the next level. All right. So let's talk about things you did well first, and then we'll move on to growth points.
Mhm.
So for the pros, number one, I thought that you demonstrated very effectively that you know how to do the job, and I would be confident that you would know how to do it going forward as well. Using lingo, you recognize rhythms of the business. We'll get more into that in a second. Number two, I thought you generally had good structure when you communicated, and you would often numericize your points as well, which was fantastic. And three, also, I think you did a good job of illuminating certain traits or skills that you want to demonstrate to the interviewer, which is going to be their main takeaway from this exercise. So diving further into each one, right? So when you are able to demonstrate that you think and talk like a program manager using lingo like steering committees, PMOs, specific teams you worked with, right? Burn down charts, comms plans, DAO, etc. That was a very effective way of gaining more trust in you that you understand what the job entails. On the great structure point, again, I thought that you were able to numericize certain things. You'd say the 3 things I want to tell you about, or 3 areas of focus, or in your overall transformation example, you gave all the different forms of management, be it change management, stakeholder management, risk management, etc., that made things a lot easier to follow. So I want to give you kudos for that. And then finally, again, the point of behaviorals is not necessarily I need to understand the story back and forth, I need to understand all the context. It's more so what characteristic or skill do you want to demonstrate to the person sitting on the other side, i.e., your interviewer, right? Especially for traits, you want to make sure you're demonstrating things that are good culture fits, right? So when you talked about using empathy and negotiation skills and working with more difficult stakeholders, that gave me a lot more confidence in you as someone who could navigate conflict and resolution quite successfully, and that definitely stuck with me. So that's a great tactic that I encourage everyone watching to be able to incorporate. Think about the traits or skills you want to emphasize before you answer these questions. All right, so let's move on to things that you could do better and would lead to an even stronger performance. Number 1 is you can ask for a moment to think. All right, so I think the first question was the strongest because I think that was one you perhaps have more experience with. But the more curveball questions, it would behoove you, similar to if you were doing a product design question, you ask for a moment to gather your thoughts, jot down some bullet points. Again, think about this trait or the skill that you want to demonstrate to the interviewer. You don't necessarily have to directly go into your answers, right? And also, this is a more minor point, but I do think you took some time to think on one of the questions in the middle, but you didn't tell me that. So it was just complete silence for a bit, which made things a tad awkward. But again, just make sure you ask for time to think and leverage it effectively. And then the second main point that I have for you, Devaki, is I think you could strike a better balance of communicating everything you did and the levels of responsibility that you have, especially as someone more senior in the org, but also giving me more specificity, right? I'll give you some examples, right? So I think you talked about high-level digital transformation project. That's great, and all the different management processes you set up. But I would have loved to hear more about, okay, so this is a specific project we worked on. Maybe it was with the e-commerce team or whatever. And then these are all the different products that we're launching at this time. This was the timeline. Here was some conflicts that were going on with these teams. That's more what I was looking for. You want to get into the meat and bones of a specific example beyond just the high-level understanding what the job entails, right? So that is the biggest, if we're thinking like the 80-20 principle, right, of what is the maximum, the thing you want to focus on to take your performance to the next level, it's that point I have for you, which is think more and demonstrate more specificity. Otherwise, I thought your performance was strong. I would be confident that you'd be a great program manager for any company that you join. So thank you again for coming in to share your experience and this mock with us. If you enjoyed this interview, visit tryexponent.com to view our Program Manager interview course, where you'll have access to our library of interview questions, expert coaching, and peer-to-peer mock interviews where you can practice yourself. Good luck on your next interview, and thanks for watching.